All right, so are you ready to dive into Meg 2 The Trench with us?
Ready.
You know,
Let's go.
it's the sequel to the Meg, where Jonas Taylor is back
Yep.
and facing even more megalodons this time.
Mm-hmm.
And this time it all kicks off because of a deep-sea mining operation
Interesting.
that unleashes these prehistoric creatures from the depths.
Oh, wow.
And some other surprises.
Okay.
So we're going to unpack the plot, the characters, and
Right.
even some behind-the-scenes stuff
Yeah.
that I think you'll find really interesting.
It's a wild ride, that's for sure.
Yeah.
What I find fascinating is how the film blends these over-the-top action sequences with some real scientific concepts.
Okay.
It's not just mindless monster mayhem.
Yeah.
There's actually some depth to it.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Depth.
A little bit.
Very clever.
Yeah.
But yeah, this movie definitely doesn't shy away from the spectacle.
No, it does not.
So the story picks up with Jonas Taylor, our hero from the first film.
Uh-huh.
He's dealing with the aftermath of that initial megalodon encounter.
Right.
And now he's got to face even more of them,
Wow.
along with a whole host of other prehistoric creatures.
Oh, my gosh.
And it all starts with this deep-sea mining operation,
Okay.
run by a rather ruthless corporate executive named Hillary Driscoll.
So Driscoll's operation is what disrupts the ecosystem down in the trench,
Right,
essentially opening a doorway for these ancient predators to escape.
right.
It's a classic case of humans messing with nature and facing unintended consequences.
We've also got some familiar faces returning, like Cliff Curtis as Mac,
Yeah.
Jonas's friend and colleague from the first movie.
Right.
And we're introduced to some new characters,
Well,
like Jiuming Zhang,
okay.
played by Wu Jing,
Right.
who's a researcher and ends up being a key ally to Jonas.
Yeah.
And then there's Jiuming's niece Maiying,
Okay.
played by Sophia Kai, who brings a youthful energy to the mix.
What's interesting about Maiying is that she forms a unique bond with Jonas.
Oh,
It's not your typical mentor-mentee relationship.
okay.
There's a genuine sense of respect and understanding between them.
I was really struck by that too.
Yeah.
It's refreshing to see a young female character in this kind of action film
Right.
who isn't just there to be rescued.
Exactly.
Maiying is smart, resourceful, and
Yeah.
she definitely holds her own.
Absolutely. The film does a good job of giving its female characters agency,
I like that.
which I appreciate.
Yeah.
Now, as much as I enjoy a good character-driven story,
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit I was also really excited to see how they'd handle the action and the creatures in this one.
Yeah.
And they definitely did not disappoint.
It definitely cranked things up a notch.
Oh, yeah.
We're not just talking one megalodon this time.
Okay.
You've got multiple megs plus other terrifying prehistoric creatures,
Oh,
all brought to life with some pretty impressive CGI.
nice.
Speaking of which, what did you think of the special effects? I know some critics found them a bit over the top,
Yeah,
but I thought they worked perfectly for this kind of film.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with giant prehistoric sharks,
Right.
you kind of have to embrace a certain level of spectacle.
Yeah.
And I think the visual effects team did a fantastic job of creating these creatures and making them feel both terrifying and believable
Right.
within the context of the film.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's not just the creatures themselves.
Mhm.
They really captured the scale and beauty of the underwater environments as well.
Yeah, they did.
Those deep sea shots were
I
incredible.
thought they were beautiful.
I felt like I was right there with Jonas exploring the trench.
There's one scene in particular that stands out for me.
Okay.
Where Jonas first encounters the multiple megalodons in the trench.
Yeah.
It's visually stunning and really sets the stage for the danger and tension that's to come.
Oh, absolutely. Talk about a heart-stopping moment.
Right.
You get a real sense of how massive and powerful these creatures are. And speaking of powerful, Jason Statham definitely brings his A game to this role.
He does.
I read that he actually performed many of his own underwater stunts,
Really?
which is pretty incredible considering the scale of the action sequences.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That level of commitment definitely shows on screen.
Yeah.
You can feel the intensity and the physicality of his performance, especially during the climactic battle at Fun Island.
Wait, hold on. Fun Island.
Yeah.
You can't just drop a name like that and not tell me more.
Okay.
What exactly goes down there?
Imagine a paradise turned into pure chaos.
Okay.
You've got tourists running for their lives,
Oh my gosh.
Jonas battling Megs and mercenaries, explosions, helicopters.
Oh,
It's absolute mayhem,
sounds intense.
but in the best way possible.
Okay.
They really went all out with that sequence.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued. That sounds like something straight out of a summer blockbuster dream sequence.
It is.
And speaking of blockbusters, how did the film actually do at the box office?
Uh,
Was it a hit?
It was definitely a commercial success,
Good.
despite some mixed reviews from critics.
Okay.
Meg 2. The Trench managed to rake in over $397 million globally.
Wow.
Clearly, audiences were hungry for some giant shark action.
That's impressive. I guess you can't argue with those numbers.
Nope.
But let's get back to the science for a moment.
All right.
How accurate is the portrayal of the megalodon itself?
Well,
Is it based on any real scientific evidence?
of course, it's a fictionalized portrayal for entertainment purposes.
Right.
However, the film's depiction of the megalodon is loosely based on scientific theories and fossil records.
Okay.
We know from paleontological evidence that megalodons were enormous prehistoric sharks,
Right.
but the exact details of their appearance and behavior are still largely a matter of speculation.
So they're taking some creative liberties,
Yeah.
but there's still a basis in scientific reality.
Well,
That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I think it adds another layer to the film because you're not just watching mindless monster mayhem. You're also getting a glimpse into the fascinating world of paleontology and marine biology.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the film also touches on some interesting real-world issues,
Okay.
particularly the potential environmental impact of deep-sea mining.
Yeah.
It's not just a throwaway plot device.
Right.
It actually reflects the growing concerns about the potential consequences of our actions when it comes to exploring and exploiting natural resources.
You know, I was thinking about that too. It's like they're using this over-the-top premise to sneak in a subtle message about environmental responsibility.
Right.
And it makes you think, if we did have the technology to explore the deepest trenches of the ocean,
Yeah.
should we?
That's a great question.
What are the ethical considerations?
And one that I think the film does a good job of raising,
Yeah.
even if it doesn't necessarily provide all the answers.
Well, it definitely gives us a lot to think about.
It does. It certainly does.
Well, while we're pondering those deeper questions,
Yeah.
let's not forget the sheer entertainment value of Meg 2, The Trench.
Oh, absolutely.
It delivers on the action, the thrills,
Yeah.
and even throws in some humor for good measure.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. There's a scene where Jonas is trying to escape a swarm of prehistoric critters,
Okay.
and it's so over the top and ridiculous that
Yeah.
you can't help but laugh.
Yeah.
They definitely knew how to balance the intensity
Yeah.
with some lighter moments.
I agree.
You mentioned the humor,
Uh-huh.
and I have to say I was pleasantly surprised by how well they incorporated it.
Yeah.
It never felt forced or out of place.
It felt very natural.
Speaking of surprises,
Okay.
one of the things that stood out to me was the relationship between Jonas and Maying.
Yeah.
It wasn't the typical kind of mentor-mentee dynamic you often see in these types of films.
It felt much more genuine and layered. They had a real connection.
Right.
And it was heartwarming to see how Jonas took her under his wing and helped her confront her fears.
It was almost like a father-daughter dynamic,
Yeah.
even though they weren't related.
Right.
And it added a whole other dimension to Jonas's character.
It did.
We see a softer side to him,
Yeah.
a more nurturing side,
It's nice to see that side of him.
which I think makes him even more likable.
It humanizes him a lot.
Right.
He's not just this invincible action hero.
Right.
He's a man with depth and compassion.
Yes.
And I think that makes his journey all the more compelling.
And it was refreshing to see Maying portrayed as a strong, capable young woman
Absolutely.
who could hold her own in dangerous situations.
Yes.
She wasn't just a damsel in distress waiting to be rescued.
No, she wasn't.
He was an active participant in the action.
Yes.
And she even saved Jonas's life at one point.
That's right, she did.
Okay, we've talked about the plot, the characters, the humor, even the science behind the megalodon.
Right.
But we can't wrap up this deep dive without addressing the elephant. Or rather, the megalodon in the room.
Okay.
The CGI was pretty spectacular.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't you say?
The visual effects team deserves a lot of credit for bringing these creatures to life in such a realistic and terrifying way.
Yeah.
I mean, you're dealing with massive prehistoric sharks.
Right.
So the CGI has to be top-notch.
Right.
And it definitely delivered.
I know some critics felt it was a bit over the top, but
Yeah.
honestly, I think that was part of the fun.
I agree.
You're not going into a Meg movie expecting a gritty, realistic documentary.
Right.
You want to be wowed by the spectacle. And the
Exactly.
CGI definitely delivered on that front.
It struck a good balance
Yeah.
between realism and spectacle.
Yeah.
The creatures looked believable,
Right.
but they were also larger than life,
Yeah.
which is exactly what you want in a movie like this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the creatures themselves, the underwater environments, the action sequences, the explosions, everything was rendered with incredible detail.
It was all very impressive.
I especially loved the scenes set in the trench.
Oh, yeah.
They were so immersive and visually stunning.
They really captured the vastness and the mystery of the deep sea.
Right.
It was almost like you were right there with Jonas exploring this alien world.
Okay, so we've established that Meg 2, The Trench, is a visually stunning, action-packed,
Yes.
and surprisingly funny monster movie.
Yes.
But what about the ending?
Oh.
Did it leave you satisfied?
I thought it was a fitting conclusion to the story.
Okay.
It wrapped up the main conflict
Yeah.
while also leaving the door open for potential sequels,
Right.
which, let's be honest, we all know are probably coming.
I'm definitely on board for more Meg adventures.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't love giant prehistoric sharks wreaking havoc?
And there's still so much potential to explore.
Right.
Maybe they could delve deeper into the mythology of the megalodon or introduce even more prehistoric creatures.
Ooh, that's a great idea. I would love to see them explore other parts of the ocean. Maybe even go to the Arctic or the Antarctic and encounter some giant prehistoric penguins or something.
Now that would be something to see.
I know, right?
A Meg movie set in a frozen wasteland
Yeah,
with giant prehistoric penguins attacking a research station.
it would be awesome.
Sign me up.
Okay, we're officially brainstorming sequel ideas now.
XVR.
But before we get too carried away,
Okay.
let's bring this deep dive back to Meg 2, The Trench.
Right.
If you had to pick one standout scene or moment from the film, what would it be?
That's a tough one. There are so many memorable moments,
I am right.
but I think I'd have to go with the climactic battle at Fun Island.
Oh, yeah.
It's pure, unadulterated chaos
Oh, yeah.
with Jonas battling Meg's
Right.
mercenaries explosions.
You know,
It's everything you could want in a summer blockbuster climax.
I have to agree with you there.
Yeah.
That scene was just pure adrenaline-fueled fun.
Yes, it was.
It was like they took everything that's awesome about action movies and crammed it into one epic sequence.
And it was visually spectacular, too.
I know.
The way they staged the fight between Jonas and the Megs, with the sunset in the background and the island being torn apart, it was just stunning to watch.
It was definitely a highlight.
Yeah.
And speaking of highlights, I think one of the things that surprised me the most about Meg 2, The Trench, was how much heart it had.
Uh-huh.
I mean, yeah, it's a monster movie,
Right.
but it's also a story about family, friendship, and courage.
I agree. It's not just a mindless action flick.
Right.
There's a real emotional core to the story.
Yeah.
And I think that's what elevates it above your typical summer blockbuster.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's those moments of character development, those quieter moments between the action that really stick with you. Like the scene where Jonas is talking to Maying about facing her fears.
Yeah.
Or the scene where he's reminiscing about his father. Those moments added so much depth and humanity to the characters.
They did, and they reminded us that even in a movie about giant prehistoric sharks,
Right.
it's the human element that ultimately resonates with the audience.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Meg 2, The Trench,
Okay.
what are some key takeaways you
Yeah.
want to leave our listener with?
Right.
What do you think they should ponder
Okay.
after watching the film?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think, first and foremost, the film reminds us of the sheer power and majesty of the natural world.
Yeah.
These creatures, these megalodons,
Uh-huh.
they ruled the oceans millions of years ago.
Right.
And they're a testament to the incredible diversity of life on our planet.
That's a powerful thought. It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
It does.
We humans may think we're at the top of the food chain, but we're just a blip on the radar of Earth's history.
Exactly. And I think the film also highlights the importance of respecting nature
Right.
and understanding the potential consequences of our actions.
Yes.
We may have the technology to explore and exploit the depths of the ocean, but we need to do so responsibly
Right.
and with an awareness of the delicate balance of ecosystems.
That's such an important message,
Yeah.
especially in today's world.
It is.
We can't just blindly exploit resources
Right.
without considering the long-term impact on our planet.
We need to be stewards of the environment,
Yeah.
not just consumers of it.
Right.
And I think Meg 2, The Trench, in its own entertaining way, reminds us of that.
It definitely does. It gives you that sense of awe and wonder at the natural world, but it also makes you think about our place in it.
Right.
And the responsibility we have to protect it.
It does make you think.
Yeah, it's both terrifying and exhilarating, right?
Right.
Knowing that there's still so much
Yeah.
we don't know about the ocean and the creatures that inhabit it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that sense of mystery is part of what makes Meg 2, The Trench, so compelling.
Yeah.
It taps into our primal fear of the unknown while also satisfying our curiosity about the natural world.
It's like a perfect blend of science fiction and adventure.
Yeah.
You get the thrill of the monster movie, but you also get a glimpse into the fascinating world of marine biology and paleontology.
And I think the film does a good job of walking that line between fantasy and reality.
Right.
It's obviously exaggerated
Yeah.
for entertainment purposes.
Of course.
But there's enough scientific grounding to make it feel plausible.
Yeah.
At least within the context of the film.
Right. It's not a documentary,
Right.
but it's not completely outlandish either.
Nope.
It finds that sweet spot where you can suspend your disbelief and just enjoy the ride.
And what a ride it is.
Yeah.
From the heart-stopping action sequences
Uh-huh.
to the stunning underwater visuals.
Yeah.
Meg 2, The Trench is a cinematic spectacle that's sure to leave you entertained.
It definitely delivers on the entertainment front,
It does.
but as we've discussed, it also offers some food for thought.
Right.
It makes you question our relationship with the natural world and the potential consequences of our actions.
It does, and I think that's a valuable takeaway, especially for a film that's primarily geared towards entertainment.
Right.
It reminds us that even in the face of something as awe-inspiring and terrifying as a megalodon,
Yeah.
we humans have a responsibility to act as stewards of the environment.
Absolutely. We can't just exploit resources without considering the long-term impact.
No?
We need to find a way to coexist with nature,
Yeah.
not dominate it.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into Meg 2, The Trench.
It has been fun.
We've covered a lot of ground, from the plot and characters
Yeah.
to the science and the ethical considerations.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating conversation.
It has.
And I hope you've enjoyed diving into this film with us.
Me too. And if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity about the ocean and the creatures that inhabit it, I encourage you to do some further exploring. There's a whole world of wonder out there waiting to be discovered.
Well said. And until next time, keep exploring, stay curious,
Yes.
and watch out for those Megs.
Watch out for those Megs.